Ava felt her heart constrict, caught between the growing pull she felt toward Henry and the fear of stepping too deeply into a world that wasn't hers. "Henry," she began, her voice unsteady. "What are we doing? This wasn't supposed to feel real." Henry rose from his seat and moved to the window, gazing out at the sprawling city below. The shimmering lights of Manhattan seemed inconsequential compared to the storm of emotions swirling within him. "I know," he said softly, "but Ava, you've changed something in me. For the first time in years, I'm questioning everything I thought mattered." His words rippled through Ava like waves crashing against a shore. She turned her gaze to the familiar comfort of her small apartment, the framed photos of her family on the walls, the well-worn furniture steeped in memories. "I'm confused too," she admitted, her voice tinged with vulnerability. "You've shown me a world I never dreamed of, but I'm scared of losing who I am." Henry's jaw tightened as guilt welled up inside him. He had brought Ava into his world, asking her to navigate its complexities without considering the toll it might take. "Ava," he said, his voice earnest, "you're the most genuine person I've ever met. Don't let anything not me change that about you." Tears traced silent paths down Ava's cheeks. What if it's already too late? What if I'm already changing? Henry took a step closer, her words piercing him in a way he hadn't anticipated. He realized he didn't just want her partnership for the sake of their arrangement, he wanted to understand her, to be part of her world. "Then we'll change together," he said quietly. "Ava, I want to know your life, your world, as much as you've seen mine. Can I visit you tomorrow?" The suggestion left Ava momentarily stunned. The idea of Henry Smith, a man known for his commanding presence and high-stakes business acumen, standing in her modest apartment, felt surreal. "Are you sure?" she asked hesitantly. "Absolutely," he replied without a moment's pause. The following morning, Henry stood outside Ava's apartment building, feeling a sensation he wasn't accustomed to: nervousness. The man who negotiated deals worth millions with unshakable confidence now found himself hesitating before a simple door. When Ava opened it, she stopped short, her eyes widening at the sight of Henry dressed down in jeans and a polo shirt. "Hi," she said, a shy smile curving her lips. "Come in." Henry stepped inside, his gaze drifting over the compact but welcoming space. The modest apartment exuded warmth, a sense of home that his luxurious penthouse could never replicate. "It's cozy," he said sincerely, nodding with appreciation. Ava felt herself relax, relieved by his genuine reaction. "Thank you. It's not much, but it's ours." At that moment, Harper emerged from her room, halting abruptly at the sight of Henry. "Ava, who's this? Wait. Are you Henry Smith?" Henry smiled, extending his hand toward her. "You must be Harper. Your sister talks about you all the time." Harper's eyes darted between Henry and Ava, her expression a mix of astonishment and curiosity. "Ava, you didn't tell me you knew Henry Smith." Caught between two worlds, Ava flushed with embarrassment. "It's complicated, Harper." The tension was interrupted by Emma's faint voice calling from her room. "Ava, who's here?" After a brief pause, Ava led Henry into her mother's room, her heart racing with anticipation. Emma's frail figure rested against the pillows, but her eyes sparkled with warmth as she took in their guest. "So, you're the Henry Smith I've been hearing about," Emma said, her voice soft but welcoming. "Ava talks about you." Henry was struck by the love and resilience radiating from this family. It was a depth of connection his wealth could never buy, a richness he had never known. The morning unfolded in a series of heartfelt conversations. They shared stories that painted vivid pictures of their lives, and Henry listened intently, moved by the strength and humor that bound them together. As he prepared to leave, Henry turned to Ava, gratitude and something deeper reflected in his eyes. "Thank you," he said simply, his voice thick with emotion, "for for showing me what truly matters." Ava stood in the doorway, watching as Henry walked away. Something had shifted between them, something she couldn't yet define. What had started as a business deal now felt like the beginning of something real, something she wasn't sure she was ready for, but couldn't ignore. Later that evening, as she sat on her bed, Ava's emotions swirled in a storm of uncertainty and hope. She reached for her diary, a ritual she had maintained since she was a teenager, and began to write. "Dear Diary, today Henry Smith stepped into my world, and for the first time I think he really saw me, not the Ava I pretend to be, but the real me. And the scariest part? I think I'm starting to see the real Henry too. What does this mean for us? For our arrangement? For my heart? Only time will tell." Closing the diary, Ava gazed out at the city that never slept. Somewhere among the glowing lights, she knew Henry was also reflecting on the day, his life, and what their paths crossing would mean for both of them. Far across the city, on the 50th floor of a towering skyscraper, Adam Ross sat in his office, a fortress of power and ambition. The sleek glass walls provided a commanding view of Manhattan, but Adam's gaze was fixed elsewhere. His attention was riveted to the computer screen before him, where a photo of Ava Miller smiled with innocent charm. Leaning back in his leather chair, Adam allowed a faint, calculating smile to touch his lips. There was something about Henry Smith's supposed fiancée that didn't quite add up. Adam Ross had built his reputation on uncovering lies and exploiting vulnerabilities, and his instincts rarely failed him. "Miss Mia," he called over the intercom, his voice smooth but firm. "Get in touch with our private investigator. I have a task that requires discretion." Meanwhile, in a quiet cafe tucked away in the Lower East Side, Ava and Henry sat at a corner table, each nursing a cup of coffee. For the first time, they were meeting in public without the facade of their arrangement, and the air between them was charged with a mix of unease and anticipation. Ava stirred her coffee absently, her eyes briefly meeting Henry's before darting away. The silence stretched just long enough to become uncomfortable before she finally broke it. So she began tentatively, "What were the investors saying after the event?" Henry smiled, some of his usual composure returning. "They couldn't stop talking about you, Ava. You impressed them more than I could have imagined." Ava felt her cheeks flush with warmth. "I was just being myself," she murmured, almost as if to convince herself. "Exactly," Henry said, his tone soft yet deliberate. "That's what makes you remarkable." For a brief moment, the bustling noise of the cafe faded away, leaving only the unspoken connection between them. Ava felt her heart race, though whether from anxiety or something else, she wasn't entirely sure. The spell was broken by the abrupt buzz of Henry's phone. He glanced at the screen, his expression darkening. "It's Adam Ross," he said, his tone carrying a hint of unease. Ava felt a chill run down her spine. Adam's probing gaze during the event had left her unsettled, and now her worst suspicions were coming to life. Henry answered the call, his brow furrowing as the conversation unfolded. When he finally hung up, his eyes met Ava's, filled with a gravity that made her stomach tighten. "Adam wants to meet," Henry explained. "Just me. He said he has questions about our relationship." Fear flickered across Ava's face. "Do you think he knows?" Reaching across the table, Henry took Ava's hand in his. The gesture was meant to reassure her, but the warmth of his touch sent a jolt of energy coursing through her. "Don't worry," he said, his voice steady. "Adam thrives on playing games. I'll take care of it." But even as he spoke, a shadow of doubt crept into Ava's mind. Something told her this confrontation would be far more dangerous than either of them anticipated. The next day, Henry entered Adam's office, the air heavy with unspoken tension. Adam greeted him with the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes, a predator assessing his prey. "Henry, my friend Adam," began smoothly, gesturing for him to take a seat. "I must say, your fiancée is quite intriguing." Henry's expression remained carefully neutral. Ava is extraordinary, he replied simply. Adam leaned forward, his sharp eyes narrowing. Yes, extraordinary indeed. So extraordinary that she seems to have appeared out of thin air. Don't you find that curious? Henry's pulse quickened, though he gave no outward sign. Years of high-stakes negotiations had taught him how to keep his composure under pressure. Love has a way of catching you off guard, he said smoothly. I'm sure you've experienced that. Adam chuckled, the sound devoid of warmth. Oh, I understand surprises all too well. But this feels like there's more to the story than you're letting on. Henry met Adam's gaze, the weight of the moment pressing heavily on him. He knew Adam was circling closer to the truth, and the consequences could be devastating. Back in her Bronx apartment, Ava paced restlessly. She had shared a carefully edited version of the truth with Harper, explaining she was working on a special project for Henry, but she had kept the more precarious details to herself. Harper watched her sister with concern. Ava, she said quietly, are you sure you know what you're doing? Ava stopped mid-step, looking at her younger sister with weary eyes. Honestly, Harper, I don't know anything anymore. A knock at the door startled them both. Ava opened it to find a man in a sharp suit holding out a badge that identified him as a private investigator. Miss Miller, he said, his tone professional but firm. I need to ask you some questions about your relationship with Henry Smith. Ava's world seemed to tilt. She felt Harper's confused gaze burning into her back, the weight of her lies pressing down like a heavy stone. With a deep breath, she stepped aside. Come in, she said, her voice calm, despite the turmoil swirling within her. Meanwhile, in Adam Ross's office, the exchange between him and Henry Smith had escalated into a verbal chess match. Every word carried weight, every glance a calculated move. You know, Henry, Adam began, his fingers idly twirling a sleek, expensive pen. I've always admired your cunning, but this time I can't help but wonder, have you gone a step too far? Henry maintained his composure, though his pulse quickened. Adam, he started, his voice calm but resolute, whatever you think you've uncovered. Adam cut him off with a sharp wave of his hand, his eyes glinting with a predatory gleam. What I've uncovered, my friend, is that you're dabbling in dangerous waters. And you know what? I thrive on danger. The chilling smile that spread across Adam's face was enough to make even the seasoned businessman falter. For the first time in years, Henry felt a deep, genuine fear not for his career, but for Ava. As the night descended over New York, 3 lives stood at a precipice, entangled in a web of lies, love, and ambition. In her modest Bronx apartment, Ava Miller sat on her worn sofa, her heart pounding as she faced the private investigator. The room, small and humble, seemed to swell with the weight of her unspoken truths. Miss Miller, the investigator began, his tone professional yet tinged with compassion. I understand this situation is difficult, but I need you to be completely honest with me. What is the nature of your relationship with Henry Smith? Ava's throat tightened under the enormity of the moment. Beside her, Harper clung to her hand, her quiet presence a source of strength. The air in the room was thick, heavy with tension. Ava's voice quivered. She paused, closing her eyes as if summoning courage from within. When she spoke again, her voice was steadier, though laced with vulnerability. The truth is, Henry and I aren't actually engaged. The investigator's brow arched slightly, but his expression remained neutral. Go on, he encouraged gently. With a deep breath, Ava began to unravel the tale she had kept hidden. She explained how the arrangement had started a simple business deal, born of necessity and strategy. But as she spoke, her words became more than a confession of facts. They revealed the unexpected feelings that had taken root in her heart, growing stronger with each passing day. I never wanted to deceive anyone, she concluded, tears slipping down her cheeks. Especially not my family. I wanted to give them a better life. That's all I ever wanted. Harper, who had been listening in stunned silence, threw her arms around her sister. "Oh, Ava," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Why didn't you tell us?" The investigator observed the emotional scene, his expression contemplative. "Miss Miller," he said gently but firmly, "do you understand the gravity of what you're admitting?" Ava nodded, dabbing her eyes with trembling hands. "Yes, I do, but I can't live this lie anymore. No matter the cost, I need to protect my family. And Henry." Meanwhile, in the sleek confines of Adam Ross's office, the tension between the two men reached its breaking point. Henry Smith, a man known for his impenetrable confidence, now felt the walls closing in around him. "So Henry," Adam said, leaning back in his chair with a triumphant smirk, "why don't you just come clean about your charming fiancée, or should I say, your hired actress?" The words hit Henry like a physical blow, though he didn't let it show. He had anticipated this confrontation, but the reality of it still stung. "Adam," he said firmly, "whatever you think you know." Adam's eyes gleamed as he interrupted. "Oh, I know plenty," he declared with relish. "I know all about your little arrangement. I know about the facade you've been selling to the world. What baffles me, Henry, is why a man like you, a powerhouse in the business world, would stoop to such a charade." Henry sat silently, weighing his options. He could deny the accusations, try to spin the truth into something palatable. But then he thought of Ava, her honesty, her courage, her ability to find light in even the darkest moments. She had shown him a side of himself he barely recognized but couldn't bear to lose. Finally, Henry spoke, his voice steady and unyielding. "You're right, Adam," he admitted. "Ava and I weren't really engaged, not at first. It began as a business arrangement." Adam leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with triumph. "Ah, there it is, the truth at last. But tell me, Henry, what happens now? How will your precious investors react when they find out they've been duped?" Henry met Adam's gaze with a newfound resolve. "They'll hear it from me," he said firmly. "I'm going to tell them the truth." Adam laughed, the sound cold and mocking. "You," he sneered. "The man who built an empire on manipulation and half-truths. You expect me to believe you'll confess everything?" Standing tall, Henry's voice was unwavering. "Believe what you want, Adam. Ava has shown me there's more to life than power and money. She's taught me the importance of honesty, of family, of love." Adam's smirk faltered for a moment, replaced by a flicker of disbelief. "Love? Don't tell me you've actually fallen for her." Henry's lips curved into a genuine smile, one that carried a quiet confidence. "Yes, Adam, I've fallen in love." Back in her Bronx apartment, Ava Miller stood suddenly, her determination clear. "I need to talk to Henry," she said firmly. "We need to end this, once and for all." The investigator, sitting quietly, nodded, respect evident in his expression. "Miss Miller," he cautioned, "I must remind you the consequences could be severe." Ava glanced at her family, Harper, her younger sister, and Emma, her frail mother, who had overheard parts of the tense conversation. "I know," Ava replied, her voice steady, "but I can't live with these lies anymore. My family deserves the truth. And Henry, well, he does too." Just as she grabbed her coat, a firm knock echoed through the room. She froze. Opening the door, she found Henry Smith standing there, breathless as if he had sprinted all the way. His usually composed face was filled with emotion, his eyes betraying his vulnerability. "Ava," he began, his voice hoarse, "we need to talk." Fate, it seemed, had chosen this moment for all truths to come out. Ava stepped aside, allowing Henry into the modest apartment. The room, small but filled with love, now felt unbearably heavy with tension. Henry's eyes scanned the space, landing on the investigator, Harper, and finally Emma, before locking onto Ava. "I've told Adam everything," Henry said, his voice steady but laden with gravity. "And now I want to tell everyone the truth. No more lies, no more games." Tears filled Ava's eyes, a mix of relief and trepidation. "I was about to do the same," she admitted quietly. Henry stepped closer, taking her hands in his. He ignored the astonished looks from everyone else in the room. "Ava," he said softly, but with conviction, "what began as a business arrangement has become something I never anticipated. I fell in love with you. Your honesty, your strength, your heart." The room fell silent. Harper gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Emma leaned gently against the doorframe, her expression a mixture of surprise and quiet understanding. Ava held Henry's gaze, her own vulnerability shining through. "Henry, I fell in love with you too. But how can we build something real on a foundation of lies?" Henry nodded, acknowledging her concern. "You're right. That's why tomorrow, at the final event with the investors, I'm going to tell them everything. The whole truth. No matter the consequences. They deserve to know. Everyone does." The investigator, who had been silently observing, finally spoke. "Mr. Smith, Miss Miller, are you fully aware that your actions could have serious legal and financial repercussions?" Henry turned to him, resolute. "We are. But some things are more important than money or reputation, truth, love, integrity. Those are what truly matter." Ava, emboldened by Henry's resolve, tightened her grip on his hand. "We'll face whatever comes together," she said, her voice unwavering. As night fell over New York City, two souls, bound by an unlikely connection, stood united in their purpose. The next day would bring trials and challenges that could dismantle everything they had built. Yet, in the small Bronx living room, hope flickered, hope that honesty, no matter how painful, could become the foundation of something genuine and new. The stage was set for the final confrontation where secrets would unravel, hearts would be tested, and Ava and Henry's true characters would be revealed to the world. The fate of their love, careers, and lives hung by a thread. But for the first time, they would face everything as a team. The morning of the pivotal event dawned under a pristine, cloudless sky, a stage seemingly prepared by the universe for the drama about to unfold. In Henry Smith's apartment, an uncharacteristic stillness enveloped the space. Every move he made was purposeful, every thought measured. Standing before the mirror, Henry adjusted his tie, his reflection revealing a mixture of determination and apprehension. It wasn't just his career hanging in the balance, it was his newfound integrity and the fragile hope of a future with Ava. Roy entered, a folder in hand. "Are you ready for this, boss?" he asked, his tone both supportive and serious. Henry turned to face him, offering a strained smile. "As ready as I'll ever be to risk losing everything I've built." Roy, who had quietly witnessed Henry's transformation over the past weeks, placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You're doing the right thing, and no matter what happens, I'll stand by you." In the Bronx, Ava was waging her own internal battle. As she dressed, Harper stood beside her, silently helping adjust the hem of her dress. The air between the sisters was thick with unspoken emotion. Finally, Harper broke the silence, her voice tentative. "Em, are you sure about this? Once you take this step, there's no turning back." Ava met her sister's gaze through the mirror, her green eyes reflecting both fear and resolve. "I'm sure, Harp. I've spent so much time trying to protect this family that I almost lost myself in the process. Today, I'm choosing to be true to who I am, no matter the cost." Emma appeared in the doorway, leaning lightly on her cane. Despite her fragile appearance, her eyes gleamed with pride. "My brave girl," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Go and show the world what an extraordinary woman you are." Tears welled in Ava's eyes as she embraced her mother and sister, drawing strength from their love. Their unwavering support felt like a shield, protecting her as she prepared to face the challenges ahead. The grand conference hall of the Plaza Hotel buzzed with energy, filled with the most influential figures in the business world. Conversation stilled the moment Henry Smith entered, Ava Miller by his side. All eyes turned toward the couple, some curious, others scrutinizing. From a shadowed corner, Adam Ross observed with a smirk of anticipation, savoring the thought of watching Henry's fall from grace. Henry approached the podium, his every step deliberate. Silence fell over the room, thick with unspoken tension. He cast a quick glance at Ava, who nodded encouragingly, her presence grounding him. Turning to face the room, Henry's voice rang out, calm but resolute. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his tone steady despite the storm within. "Thank you for joining us today. Before we proceed with business discussions, there is something I must share." A murmur rippled through the room. From his corner, Adam leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with mischief, anticipating Henry's confession. Taking a deep breath, Henry continued, "For years, I built my career on calculated strategies and often half-truths. I convinced myself the ends justified the means. But recently, I met someone who showed me the true value of honesty and integrity." He paused, his gaze locking on Ava. "Ava Miller is not my fiancée. She was hired to play this role, a plan designed to impress you and secure investments." Gasps echoed through the hall, shock and indignation spreading among the crowd. Adam's smile widened, his triumph seemingly assured. But Henry's voice grew stronger, more impassioned. What began as a fabrication turned into something real, something profound. "Ava opened my eyes to a world beyond contracts and profits. She taught me about compassion, about family, and about love." Tears glistened in Ava's eyes as she stepped forward, her voice trembling but clear. "It's true," she admitted. "I agreed to this arrangement because my family was in financial distress. I was desperate to help them. But in the process, I discovered that some things are more important than money. I learned the power of honesty, of integrity, and yes, of love." The room hung in stunned silence, judgment and uncertainty swirling in the air. It was Lucas Brown, one of the most respected investors, who finally broke the tension. "Well," he said, his voice carrying authority, "I think that's admirable." Heads turned as Lucas stepped forward, his words commanding attention. "Henry, you could have perpetuated this farce indefinitely. Instead, you chose truth, knowing the risks. That, to me, is worth more than any balance sheet." The murmurs shifted. Supportive voices grew louder. Isabella Brown joined her husband, addressing Ava with warmth. "My dear, your courage and sincerity are inspiring. Your love for your family and your principles are a rare gift." Adam, sensing his victory slipping away, stepped into the light. "You can't be serious. They deceived all of us," his outrage echoed, but the room was unmoved. The investors, touched by the honesty they had witnessed, expressed their admiration. Some even suggested increasing their investments, impressed by the ethical shift Henry seemed to represent. Adam's frustration boiled over. "I have proof documents exposing the full extent of this fraud." From the back of the room, the private investigator, who had been a quiet observer, stepped forward. "Mr. Ross, I suggest caution before making accusations. My investigation uncovered irregularities in your own business dealings, details I'm certain you'd prefer to remain private." Adam's face drained of color. Without another word, he retreated, defeated. The investors, sensing trouble, quickly distanced themselves from him. In the midst of the chaos, Henry turned to Ava, taking her hands gently in his. The crowd faded away as he spoke, his voice low but fervent. "Ava, you've changed my life in ways I never thought possible. I love you not as part of a facade or agreement, but completely and deeply. Would you accept me, not as a businessman, but as a man striving to be better because of you?" Tears streamed down Ava's face as she smiled. "Henry, you've changed my life too. You've shown me a world of possibilities, but more importantly, you've shown me the importance of staying true to myself. Yes, I accept you with all my heart." The room erupted into applause, but for Henry and Ava, the noise melted away. At that moment, they weren't the businessman and the waitress, nor actors in a charade. They were simply Henry and Ava, two people who had found love in the most unlikely of circumstances. In the months that followed, Henry and Ava faced many challenges. Rebuilding trust, both in their business and personal lives, was no small task. But together they created something beautiful. Henry transformed his company, prioritizing social responsibility and ethical practices. Ava, with Henry's unwavering support, founded an organization to help families facing medical hardships, an endeavor inspired by her own struggles. On a crisp autumn afternoon, they were married in an intimate ceremony in the Bronx, surrounded by Ava's family and closest friends. Harper Miller stood proudly as her sister's maid of honor, her smile radiant with joy. Emma Miller, now healthier thanks to the care they could afford, blessed them with tears of happiness as they exchanged vows. Henry and Ava knew their journey was far from over. Life would continue to test them, but they were ready to face it all together with love, honesty, and the profound truth that sometimes the best stories begin with a lie, only to blossom into something truly authentic. In a world often driven by ambition and appearances, the story of Henry Smith and Ava Miller reminds us that the most extraordinary transformations happen when we embrace truth and love. What began as a calculated plan to secure a business deal turned into a heartfelt journey of self-discovery, honesty, and connection. Ava's courage to stay true to herself and Henry's determination to confront his past mistakes not only brought them closer, but also inspired those around them to value integrity over illusion. Their journey wasn't without challenges, secrets unraveled, loyalties were tested, and risks were taken. Yet, through it all, Henry and Ava showed us that even the most unlikely circumstances can lead to something genuine and beautiful. From the grandeur of Manhattan's elite to the warmth of Ava's family in the Bronx, their story proves that love and authenticity can bridge even the widest gaps. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to support our channel by liking this video, subscribing for more inspiring content, and sharing it with those you care about. Your support allows us to continue bringing meaningful stories to life. We'd love to hear from you. What part of Henry and Ava's journey resonated with you the most? Was it Ava's unwavering love for her family, Henry's transformation, or the hope that blossomed in the face of uncertainty? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let us know how this story inspired or moved you. Your engagement not only fuels our creativity, but also builds a community of viewers who appreciate stories that celebrate the beauty of human connection. Thank you for being part of this journey, and stay tuned for the next incredible story waiting to unfold.